Listen carefully. Not tomorrow, not later now, because warnings don't announce themselves twice. They don't wait for you to feel ready or comfortable. They show up when you're distracted, when you think you have time, when you believe nothing urgent could possibly touch you. And that belief is exactly what gets people caught off guard. You think Saturday morning is just another checkpoint. Sleep in, scroll, repeat. But time doesn't move the way you think it does when consequences are lining up. It compresses, it accelerates, it watches you hesitate. And every delay feels harmless until it isn't. That warnings rarely scream. That's the part people misunderstand. They expect alarms, chaos, something dramatic enough to justify panic. But real warnings are polite. They clear their throat and wait to be noticed. They arrive as a strange pause in your routine, a quiet sense that something is off, a moment where the world feels slightly tilted, but not enough to stop you from moving forward. And because they don't look dangerous, you ignore them. You tell yourself, if it were serious, it would be louder. Loud warnings are easy to respect. Quiet ones require intelligence, and intelligence requires responsibility. A quiet warning doesn't force you to act. It gives you a choice, and that choice is uncomfortable because it puts the burden on you, not on circumstances, not on fate, not on bad luck. If you ignore a scream, you can claim fear. If you ignore a whisper, you have to admit you chose not to listen. The world is designed to keep you distracted enough to miss the quiet signs. Notifications, noise, schedules, obligations, entertainment. You're constantly occupied, constantly busy, constantly convincing yourself that stillness is a luxury you'll earn later. And in that noise, warnings slip through like shadows. They don't interrupt your life, they brush against it. They make you uneasy without explanation. The uneasiness is the signal. People mistake quiet warnings for anxiety because anxiety is easier to dismiss. You can label it stress, overthinking, exhaustion. You can medicate it with distraction. You can laugh it off. A dramatic warning wouldn't allow that. It would corner you. A quiet one gives you room to escape, and most people take that escape without realizing it's a trap. Think about how many disasters begin with a small feeling you chose to ignore. A conversation you avoided, a decision you postponed, a boundary you didn't enforce because it felt awkward. Nothing exploded in that moment, so you assumed everything was fine. Quiet warnings work like interest. Small neglect accumulates. By the time it demands attention, the cost has multiplied. Silence is the most honest messenger. It doesn't exaggerate. It doesn't manipulate. It simply exists. When something inside you tightens for no clear reason, when your instincts slow you down even though logic tells you to hurry, that's not weakness, that's perception. But perception is inconvenient. It asks you to pause when momentum feels good. It asks you to question when comfort feels earned. Dramatic warnings feel external. Quiet warnings feel personal. And that's why they're easier to deny. If the danger doesn't look obvious, you start questioning yourself instead. You assume you're being dramatic, sensitive, paranoid. You gaslight your own instincts before anyone else gets the chance. That self-doubt is exactly where the warning loses its power. The most dangerous thing about quiet warnings is that they don't come with consequences attached. Not immediately. There's no punishment for ignoring them in the moment. Life continues, the sun rises, people smile. Everything appears normal, and that normality convinces you that the warning was false. You mistake the delay for proof that nothing was wrong. But warnings aren't predictions. They're opportunities. They don't tell you what will happen. They tell you what could be avoided. And avoidance doesn't feel heroic. It feels boring. It feels unnecessary. It feels like changing direction without applause. People love reacting to chaos. They hate preventing it. Quiet warnings respect your intelligence. They assume you're capable of noticing patterns, of connecting dots, of trusting subtle signals instead of demanding spectacle. But most people want certainty before action, and certainty only comes after damage. So they wait. They wait for proof. They wait for clarity. They wait for pain. And when pain arrives loud and undeniable, They call it unexpected. The irony is that by the time a warning becomes dramatic, it's no longer a warning, it's a consequence. Quiet warnings exist to give you the chance to act, while dignity is still intact, while choices are still yours, while damage is still optional. They are the last moment where prevention is possible instead of recovery. Ignoring quiet warnings doesn't make you brave. It makes you careless. It means you chose comfort over awareness, routine over intuition, noise over truth. The world doesn't punish you immediately for that choice, and that delay feels like mercy, but it's just timing. Timing that runs out silently, patiently, without announcing when the window closes, leaving you later staring at the wreckage, wondering when it all went wrong, unable to pinpoint the moment because the moment didn't shout, it whispered, and you were too busy listening for thunder to notice the sound that mattered. Time is the smoothest liar you'll ever meet. It doesn't rush you. It doesn't threaten you. It smiles and says, relax, you've got plenty of it. Tomorrow looks wide open. Next week feels guaranteed. Saturday feels far away. And because nothing is collapsing right now, you assume nothing ever will. That's how the illusion works. Time doesn't steal from you violently. It borrows quietly and never gives anything back. You tell yourself you'll deal with it later, because later feels safer. Later doesn't ask for courage. Later doesn't demand confrontation. Later lets you stay comfortable a little longer. The illusion of having enough time is really permission to avoid discomfort. It's a soft excuse wrapped in logic. You convince yourself that waiting is being responsible, that hesitation is being careful, that delay is somehow wisdom. But delay isn't neutral. It's a decision disguised as patience. People underestimate how quickly control slips away. Not all at once, not dramatically, just a little at a time. One postponed conversation, one ignored feeling, one choice you didn't make because making it would have changed things. Nothing explodes in that moment, so you move on reassured. The illusion strengthens. See, you think nothing happened. That's because consequences don't announce themselves on schedule. They wait until your options are smaller. Having enough time makes people lazy with their instincts. That quiet signal in your chest gets pushed aside because there's no urgency attached to it. You promise yourself you'll listen later, when it's clearer, when you're calmer, when you're more prepared. But clarity doesn't come from waiting. It comes from acting while things are still unclear. Waiting only lets the situation grow roots. The illusion is comforting because it removes responsibility from the present. If there's plenty of time, then there's no pressure to choose now. No pressure to change direction. No pressure to risk looking dramatic or wrong. You get to stay where you are and call it temporary. Temporary turns into routine faster than people realize. Routine turns into identity, and identity resists change violently. Time doesn't feel dangerous because it doesn't hurt immediately. It feels like a cushion, a buffer, a safety net. You assume that if things really mattered, they would demand your attention louder. But the most important moments in life don't shout. They wait. They let you pass them by calmly. They don't chase you. They assume you're paying attention. The illusion of enough time also creates arrogance. Not loud arrogance, quiet arrogance. The belief that you'll recognize the turning point when it arrives, that you'll know when it's serious, that you'll suddenly become decisive when the moment truly matters. But decisive muscles don't appear on demand. They're built by using them early when the stakes feel small. People who wait for the right moment usually miss it, because the right moment doesn't feel special while it's happening. Saturday morning feels ordinary because consequences rarely feel special until they've passed. Deadlines that matter most don't look like deadlines. They look like just another day where you could have acted and didn't. The illusion tells you that action later will be just as effective as action now. That's a lie. Timing changes everything. A word spoken too late doesn't land the same. A boundary set too late doesn't protect. A decision made too late doesn't feel like a choice anymore. People confuse calm with safety. If nothing bad is happening, they assume nothing bad is coming. But calm can be the space before impact, silence before collapse. The illusion of enough time thrives in calm because calm lowers your guard. You relax, you postpone, you assume you're in control because nothing is demanding control from you yet. Time doesn't take your options away all at once. It narrows them. Slowly, politely. You don't notice the walls closing in because they move at a pace that feels reasonable. You're still choosing, but from fewer paths. Still deciding, but with less power. Still free, but only within limits you didn't realize you were accepting. And when the illusion finally breaks, it doesn't shatter loudly. It dissolves. One moment you realize the window closed without asking you, that the moment you were waiting for already passed while you were busy believing you had more time, that what could have been prevented now has to be managed, that what could have been avoided now has to be survived. And the most unsettling part isn't the loss itself. It's the realization that nothing forced your hand, nothing rushed you, nothing stopped you, except the comforting lie that time was on your side and waiting was harmless and tomorrow was guaranteed and urgency was optional. And now you're standing in a reality shaped entirely by the moment. You delayed because you thought you had enough time to decide later. Discomfort is misunderstood. People treat it like an enemy, something to escape, something to numb, something to explain away as anxiety so they don't have to listen to it. Anxiety sounds medical. Discomfort sounds personal. Anxiety feels like something happening to you. Discomfort feels like something you're responsible for responding to. That's why people rename it. Because if it's just anxiety, you can ignore it. If it's a signal, you have to act. Real signals don't come with explanations. They don't present charts or evidence. They don't argue their case. They show up as a tight chest, a delayed breath, a hesitation you can't justify. And immediately you feel the urge to dismiss it. You look for logic to overpower it. You ask yourself what's wrong with you instead of what's wrong with the situation. That's the trick. The signal isn't loud enough to dominate your thoughts, but it's persistent enough to haunt them. Anxiety is chaotic. It spirals. It multiplies. It feeds on imagined futures and worst-case scenarios. Discomfort is focused. It points in one direction. It doesn't flood your mind. It taps you on the shoulder and waits. But because it's quiet, because it doesn't hijack your system, you underestimate it. You think if it were important, it would be louder. You think if it mattered, it would make sense. Discomfort often arrives before language does. Before your brain can build a story, your body reacts. That reaction is older than logic. It's built from patterns you survived, from moments that taught you what danger feels like before danger announces itself. But modern life teaches you to distrust that intelligence. You're trained to value explanations over sensations, proof over perception. So when discomfort shows up without a clear reason, you treat it like a glitch instead of a warning. People say trust your gut until the gut makes them uncomfortable. Then suddenly it's overthinking. Suddenly it's fear. Suddenly it's weakness. Discomfort doesn't flatter you. It doesn't tell you you're strong or brave or special. It tells you something is misaligned. Something doesn't fit. Something is off, and acknowledging that means accepting that a choice in front of you might be wrong, that a person might not be safe, that a path might not lead where you hoped. Anxiety demands reassurance. Discomfort demands distance. Anxiety wants answers. Discomfort wants space. Anxiety grows louder when you focus on it. Discomfort grows clearer when you slow down. That's how you tell the difference. But slowing down is hard in a world addicted to momentum. Pausing feels like falling behind, so you keep moving, dragging the discomfort with you, hoping it will dissolve on its own. It doesn't. It waits. It follows. It shows up again in small ways. You feel it before sending a message, before agreeing to something you don't want, before staying silent when you should speak. Each time you ignore it, it doesn't punish you, it adapts. It gets quieter, not because the danger is gone, but because you've trained yourself not to listen. Discomfort is not panic. Panic screams. Discomfort stares. Panic scatters your thoughts. Discomfort sharpens them. Panic makes you want to escape everything. Discomfort makes you want to escape one specific thing. That specificity is important. That's information. But information without action becomes noise. People who ignore discomfort long enough start confusing numbness for peace. When the signal stops knocking, they assume the threat passed. In reality, the signal gave up. Your system learned that warnings aren't welcome. That's when damage happens quietly. You stay in places that drain you. You accept explanations that don't sit right. You tolerate behavior you once questioned. And because there's no immediate pain, you call it stability. Discomfort often shows up before boundaries are crossed, not after. It's the early draft of pain. It's prevention, not reaction. Anxiety usually shows up after damage, when your system is already overwhelmed. That's why people who listen early suffer less later, even if they look dramatic in the moment. Ignoring discomfort doesn't make you rational. It makes you delayed. You're not avoiding a problem. You're scheduling it for a time when it will be harder to handle. Discomfort asks for small adjustments. Ignoring it invites large consequences. The cruel irony is that people who pride themselves on being logical are often the best at dismissing discomfort. They need reasons. They need data. They need certainty. Discomfort offers none of that. It offers timing, and timing doesn't wait for permission. So when that quiet shows up, when nothing is technically wrong, but everything feels slightly misaligned, when you can't explain it without sounding irrational, that's not anxiety failing you. That's awareness arriving early. And early messages are always easier to delete than late ones, especially when they don't scare you enough to force attention, and don't flatter you enough to feel important, and don't hurt you enough to demand reaction. They just sit there, patient, watching to see whether you'll respect the signal or explain it away, until it has no choice but to become something louder, heavier, undeniable, something you'll finally listen to and call obvious, even though it warned you long before it had to raise its voice. Delay doesn't steal your choices all at once. That would be too obvious, too kind. Delay is patient. It lets you believe you're still in control while quietly rearranging the board behind your back. You think you're choosing later, but later is already choosing for you. Every pause feels harmless. Every not now sounds reasonable. And that's the danger. Power doesn't disappear loudly. It leaks at first. Delay feels like freedom. You tell yourself you're not rushing, not panicking, not acting emotionally. You feel mature, responsible, calm. You believe you're keeping options open, when in reality, you're letting them expire one by one. Choices don't stay equal over time. They decay, they weaken, they get heavier. What was once a simple decision slowly turns into damage control. Delay changes the nature of a choice. Early on, choosing is proactive. You move because you want to. Later, choosing becomes reactive. You move because you have to. And eventually, there's no choice left at all, just reactions dressed up as decisions. You still move, still explain, still justify, but you're no longer directing the outcome. You're responding to it. The scariest part is how invisible the shift is. No one taps you on the shoulder and says, "This is the last moment you can decide cleanly." Life doesn't announce when agency expires. It just adjusts the consequences. The longer you wait, the more expensive every option becomes. The easier paths close quietly. The harder ones stay open, wide, and unforgiving. Delay feeds on comfort, as long as nothing hurts badly enough. You convince yourself there's no urgency. You confuse absence of pain with presence of control. But comfort is not neutral. Comfort is a sedative. It dulls instinct. It softens urgency. It convinces you that tomorrow will feel the same as today. It rarely does. Every delayed decision hands a little authority to circumstances. You let other people decide by default. You let events decide by momentum. You let fear decide by avoidance. And because you didn't actively choose those outcomes, you later tell yourself, they just happened. That story protects your ego, but it costs you accountability. Delay also rewrites your identity. You start seeing yourself as someone who waits, who hesitates, who needs more information, more certainty, more time. That identity becomes familiar, comfortable. And once waiting becomes who you are, acting feels unnatural, risky. out of character. The longer you delay, the harder it is to recognize yourself as someone capable of decisive action. There's a cruel trick in delay. It makes you feel safe while making you weaker. Each postponed boundary teaches people how to treat you. Each postponed conversation teaches problems they can stay unresolved. Each postponed exit teaches situations they don't need to change because you'll adapt. Delay trains the world around you while convincing you that you're still evaluating. Choice requires leverage. Leverage comes from timing. Early decisions have leverage because alternatives are still alive. Relationships can still shift. Situations can still be redirected. Words can still land with impact. Delay drains that leverage. When you finally speak, the other side has already adjusted. When you finally act, the situation has already hardened. People often say they're waiting for clarity, but clarity doesn't arrive through delay. It arrives through friction, through movement, through making small decisions early instead of one desperate decision late. Delay doesn't make things clearer. It just makes them louder. By the time you're forced to choose, emotions are higher, stakes are heavier, and consequences are sharper. There's also a false sense of fairness in delay. You think you're giving things time to improve, giving people chances, giving situations room to resolve themselves. But time is not fair. Time favors whatever is already happening. If something is draining you now, time will deepen that drain. If something is misaligned now, time will entrench it. Delay doesn't pause reality. It accelerates patterns. And the most dangerous illusion is believing you can always decide later with the same power you have now. That's not how power works. Power is situational. It depends on options, energy, credibility, and timing. Delay quietly erodes all four. You get tired. People lose patience. Narratives form without you. Doors don't slam shut, they just stop opening. When you finally feel the pressure, you mistake it for fate. You say this is just how things turned out, but fate didn't corner you. Delay did. Small hesitations stacked on top of each other until the space to move disappeared. You didn't lose your power suddenly. You loaned it out in pieces, and now it doesn't belong to you anymore. That's why delay feels so polite and ends so cruelly. It never argues. It never forces. It just waits for you to keep waiting until choosing turns into coping and freedom turns into acceptance, and you look back, trying to remember when exactly the moment passed where this could have gone another way, and all you find is a series of quiet pauses you once called harmless and patient and reasonable, while they were slowly, methodically taking your ability to decide away from you without ever asking permission. Hesitation feels innocent at first. It pretends to be thoughtfulness, caution, maturity. You pause, you observe, you wait for a better moment. Nothing bad happens immediately, so hesitation earns your trust. It sits beside you quietly, nodding along while you convince yourself you're being smart. But hesitation isn't neutral. It's a countdown disguised as patience. There's a moment, small, quiet, easy to miss, where hesitation stops being a pause and starts becoming a decision, not a dramatic one. No announcement, no warning label, just a subtle shift where doing nothing begins to do something on your behalf. That's the moment people never notice until it's already behind them. Before that moment, you're choosing whether to act. After it, reality starts choosing for you, and the transition is so smooth you don't feel the handoff. You still believe you're in control. You still say things like, "I'm just waiting," or "I'll decide soon." But soon is already shrinking. Options are thinning. Leverage is fading. Hesitation turns into consequence when the world stops waiting for your clarity. People move on. Situations harden. Narratives form without your input. Silence gets interpreted. Absence gets filled. You think you're holding space, but space hates being empty. It gets occupied. At first, consequences are subtle. A tone changes. An opportunity doesn't come back the same way. A door stays technically open, but no one is holding it anymore. You feel a slight resistance where there used to be ease. You brush it off. You tell yourself it's nothing. That's the danger zone. That's where hesitation gets comfortable. The moment hesitation becomes consequence is when action would now cost more than it would have earlier. More effort, more explanation. more damage control. You didn't miss the chance completely, you just made it heavier. And weight changes behavior. Things you would have done confidently before now feel risky. Things that once felt simple now feel dramatic. People love to believe they'll recognize that moment when it arrives. They won't. It doesn't feel urgent. It feels slightly awkward, slightly tense. Like something is off, but not enough to justify action. That's why it works. Consequences don't start loud. They start inconvenient. Hesitation feeds on fear of being wrong. You don't want to act too soon, say the wrong thing, choose the wrong path. So you wait for certainty. But certainty never shows up before consequences do. It shows up after, when the cost is clear and the options are gone. Then suddenly everything makes sense. There's a cruel irony here. The people who hesitate the most are often the ones who care the most. They think more. They feel deeper. They calculate outcomes. And while they're calculating, the world keeps moving. Consequences don't care how thoughtful you were. They only care how late you arrived. Hesitation turns into consequence the moment inaction starts shaping expectations. When others assume you won't speak up, won't leave, won't decide, won't change, that assumption becomes the new baseline. And once you're predictable in your hesitation, your action loses its shock value, its power. That's when people say things like, I didn't think you minded, or you never said anything before. And they're not lying. Your hesitation trained them. Your silence educated them. The consequence isn't just what happens to you. It's how others learn they can proceed without you. Another sign the moment is past is when acting now feels like disruption instead of direction. Early action guides. Late action interrupts. Early boundaries are respected. Late boundaries are questioned. Early exits are clean. Late exits are messy. That difference is everything. Hesitation becomes consequence when you start explaining instead of choosing. When your language shifts from I want to I should have. From intention to regret. From agency to narration. You're no longer inside the moment. You're commenting on it. And once consequences appear, hesitation doesn't disappear. It changes form. Now you hesitate because the stakes are higher, because the fallout is real, because acting now would force you to confront what delay already cost you. So you hesitate again and consequences compound. That's how people get trapped, not by one big mistake, but by a series of small hesitations that slowly convert freedom into limitation. Each pause seems harmless. Together, they build a cage you don't recognize until you try to move. The moment hesitation turns into consequence isn't marked by disaster. It's marked by realization, the quiet understanding that the version of the future you were waiting to choose no longer exists, that the clean option expired while you were thinking, that what's left isn't wrong, just reduced, narrower, heavier. And the most unsettling part is knowing nothing stopped you, no force, no villain, no dramatic failure. Just time moving forward while you stood still, mistaking delay for safety, patience for wisdom, and silence for control, until hesitation crossed an invisible line and became the very outcome you were trying to avoid. Routine is comfortable. That's why it's dangerous. It gives you structure, predictability, something to hold on to when the world feels uncertain. You wake up, repeat the same motions, follow the same paths, tell yourself this is stability. And when intuition shows up tapping you on the shoulder, routine is the first thing you use to silence it. You say you're busy. You say now isn't the time. You say you can't disrupt everything over a feeling. Intuition doesn't come with a calendar invite. It doesn't respect your schedule. It doesn't care that you finally feel settled. It shows up when something doesn't belong, when a choice is misaligned, when a person or a situation is quietly pulling you in the wrong direction. And instead of listening, you defend your routine like it's proof that everything is fine. Because if you admit something is wrong, you risk shaking the structure you worked so hard to build. Routine rewards obedience. Do the same thing long enough and it stops asking questions. It lulls you into autopilot. You stop checking in with yourself because checking in might reveal something inconvenient. Intuition is inconvenient. It asks you to pause, to reevaluate, to consider that the life you've organized so carefully might be leading you somewhere you don't actually want to go. Ignoring intuition feels practical, sensible, mature. You tell yourself feelings aren't facts. You say you need logic, evidence, certainty. But intuition isn't about facts, it's about timing. It's the early warning system that activates before logic has enough data to speak. By the time logic catches up, intuition has usually already been ignored long enough for the problem to grow teeth. Routine doesn't want to be questioned. It wants consistency. It wants compliance. It convinces you that disruption equals danger, that change equals instability. So when intuition whispers that something feels off, routine counters with responsibility, bills, obligations, expectations. And those things sound heavier than a quiet inner voice, so the voice gets dismissed. People don't ignore intuition because they don't hear it. They ignore it because listening would require action. And action threatens routine. Action might mean uncomfortable conversations, awkward pauses, breaking patterns, letting go of something familiar, even if it's slowly draining you. Routine says stay. Intuition says look closer, and staying is easier than looking. The more you ignore intuition, the quieter it becomes. Not because it's wrong, but because you're teaching it that it's not welcome. Your system adapts. It stops alerting you early. It waits until the signal is strong enough to break through routine's defenses. By then, the message arrives as stress, burnout, resentment, anxiety, and you call that bad luck or pressure, never connecting it to the warnings you dismissed when they were gentle. Routine makes you loyal to outcomes instead of truth. You stay in situations that don't fit because leaving would disrupt the flow. You keep tolerating behavior you once questioned because challenging it would create friction. You accept explanations that don't sit right because digging deeper would slow things down. You prioritize continuity over clarity. Intuition is not dramatic. It doesn't demand attention. It doesn't beg. It simply waits for you to be quiet enough to notice it. Routine keeps you noisy, busy, distracted, always moving, always justifying, always saying later. And later becomes the graveyard of instincts you didn't trust. Protecting routine often feels like protecting peace, but it's not peace, it's maintenance. Peace expands you. Routine contains you. There's a difference. One feels alive. The other feels managed. Intuition usually challenges what's being managed too tightly. It points at the cracks in the structure. Routine rushes to patch them instead of asking why they keep appearing. People pride themselves on being disciplined, consistent, reliable. Those traits become armor against intuition. You don't want to be seen as someone who changes their mind, someone who disrupts stability, someone who listens to feelings. So you override the signal and stay the course, even when the course feels heavier every day. Ignoring intuition to protect routine is how people wake up years later, in lives that look fine on the outside and feel empty on the inside. Nothing went wrong suddenly. Nothing collapsed. It just slowly drifted away from who they were meant to be while they were busy being responsible. Routine keeps score of days. Intuition keeps track of alignment. One measures repetition. The other measures truth. When the two conflict, routine feels louder because it's supported by habits, expectations, and fear of change. Intuition feels fragile because it asks you to trust yourself without guarantees. And that's the gamble people avoid. Trusting a quiet inner signal over a structure they can see. Trusting a feeling over a schedule. Trusting alignment over approval. So they stay. They repeat. They protect the routine. And in doing so, they silence the only part of themselves that was trying to warn them that something wasn't wrong enough yet to force a crisis, but was wrong enough to cost them if they kept pretending everything was fine. Deadlines don't exist to scare you. That's the lie people tell themselves so they can ignore them. Real deadlines don't shout urgency. They draw a line and wait to see who notices. And the most dangerous deadlines aren't about finishing something, they're about deciding something. Direction-setting deadlines don't announce outcomes. They quietly determine them based on whether you act or drift. A deadline that decides direction feels ordinary while it's happening. There's no countdown clock, no dramatic pressure. Just a stretch of time where action is possible and inaction feels harmless. You assume the future will remain flexible because nothing has locked yet. But direction doesn't lock suddenly. It hardens gradually. Like wet cement that looks forgiving until you try to move your foot. People think outcomes are shaped by big moments. They're not. They're shaped by the small windows where a choice could have nudged things slightly left or right. Direction is decided early, quietly, long before the result becomes visible. By the time the outcome shows itself, the deadline that mattered has already passed. These deadlines don't care what you intend. Intention doesn't steer direction. Action does. You can want change with your whole heart and still move nowhere if you don't act while movement is still light. Direction-setting deadlines are ruthless that way. They don't punish bad intentions, they ignore them. What makes these deadlines dangerous is how reasonable it feels to miss them. You're not lazy. You're tired. You're not careless. You're cautious. You're not avoiding. You're preparing. Every excuse sounds responsible. That's why the deadline works. It filters out people who wait for certainty instead of moving with awareness. When a direction-setting deadline passes, you don't feel it immediately. Life doesn't send a notification. Things keep going. You wake up the next day and everything looks the same. That sameness convinces you nothing changed. But direction has inertia. Once it sets, it resists correction. Adjustments that would have been subtle now feel drastic. Deadlines that decide direction often revolve around speaking up, leaving, starting, or stopping. Small actions with big ripple effects. A conversation that could have reoriented a relationship. A boundary that could have reset expectations. A decision that could have altered momentum. Miss that window, and the same action later feels confrontational instead of clarifying. People say they'll act when it matters. They don't realize it already does. Direction-setting deadlines don't wait for pressure. They expire under comfort, while things are tolerable. While you can still explain staying. While you can still call it temporary. That's when choice has power. After the deadline, movement still exists, but it's different. You're no longer steering, you're correcting. And correction is expensive. It costs more energy, more conflict, more loss. You're fighting against a path that's already been walked on. The illusion is thinking outcomes are decided at the end. They're decided at the beginning, when you either align or compromise. When you either act on the signal or postpone it. When you either choose direction or let habit choose for you. Deadlines that decide direction don't demand perfection. They demand presence, awareness, willingness to disrupt momentum before momentum becomes identity. Once a direction is established, people around you adapt to it. Expectations form, roles settle, and changing direction later doesn't just affect you. It disrupts a system that's already adjusted to your silence or compliance. That's why late decisions get resistance. Not because they're wrong, but because they're late. The world doesn't like sudden turns. Early turns feel natural. Late turns feel rebellious. The same choice, different timing, completely different response. People often confuse fate with direction they never challenged. They say this is just how things turned out. But things don't turn out. They drift. And drift has deadlines. Miss them. And you don't lose the ability to choose. You lose the ease of choosing. Direction-setting deadlines are mercilessly fair. They don't judge you. They don't care about your reason. They just observe whether you acted while action was still light, whether you trusted the signal before proof arrived, whether you chose alignment over comfort. And the most unsettling part is realizing that nothing catastrophic had to happen for the direction to be set. No argument, no collapse, no failure. Just a quiet window where you could have nudged your life 1 degree in a different direction and didn't. And now that 1 degree has compounded into distance. And the path ahead looks fixed not because it was inevitable, but because the deadline that would have kept it flexible passed unnoticed while you were waiting for a sign loud enough to force your hand instead of recognizing that the silence itself was the sign telling you this moment decides where you're going long before it decides where you end up. You ever notice how people love to tell you what you should be doing? Oh, they've got a whole list, don't they? Be kind, be selfless, give, 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 until there's nothing left. And if you dare think about yourself, well, now you're the selfish one. Isn't that funny? The moment you stop bleeding for everyone else, suddenly you're the villain. The classic lie, self-care is selfish. It's funny, isn't it? The way people have convinced themselves that the moment you start thinking about your own needs, you're suddenly some villain, some egotistical monster. They want you to sacrifice, to be the martyr, to wear yourself down until you're barely holding on to anything, just so they can feel comfortable in their own little world. They think it's noble. They think you're a hero when you're running on fumes. But here's the truth no one wants to hear. You can't save anyone if you're drowning. You can't give something you don't have. People will take from you until there's nothing left, and the second you stop, they'll point fingers. What happened to the good you, they'll ask. What happened to the savior they could lean on whenever they needed a fix? But here's the thing. If you keep giving, if you keep running yourself ragged to fix everyone around you, what's left for you? What do you have left to give when you've already given everything? You're exhausted, burned out, walking around like a shell of yourself. And for what? So others can feel comfortable while you get lost in their chaos? It's like a game they play, where you're the one always picking up the pieces, and they're the ones who get to walk away unscathed. People love to tell you to put others first, don't they? Oh, you should do this for them. You have to be there for them. They'll guilt trip you until you're curled up in the corner, wondering if you've even earned the right to exist for yourself. And if you dare say no, if you dare put yourself ahead of someone else, you're the villain. You're selfish. You're cold. They'll look at you like you're a monster, a creature who doesn't understand the importance of putting others before yourself. But it's all an illusion. The truth? They're just taking advantage. You can't keep giving, running yourself ragged for everyone else without eventually breaking. And when you break, they won't be there to pick up the pieces. Oh, no, no, no. They'll be too busy asking why you're not the same person you used to be, why you're not the one doing all the work, carrying all the burdens, making sure everyone else's lives are shiny and bright while yours falls apart in the background. It's a game, and the rules are simple. You lose, because when you don't take care of yourself first, when you give everyone else your energy, your time, your compassion, your care, the truth comes out. You're not helping anyone. You're enabling them. You're enabling their dependency on you. You're creating a cycle where everyone around you relies on you to fix their mess while they keep making more of it. And you end up with nothing. Nothing left, nothing to show for all the sacrifice you made. So you know what? Stop. Stop giving it all away. Stop pretending that being there for everyone else makes you the good guy. Because here's the catch. If you don't take care of yourself, you're no good to anyone. You're just a worn-out version of yourself. A shell. And a shell can't carry the weight of the world. You can't be someone else's savior if you can't save yourself. It's that simple, and if they don't get it, if they get angry when you say no, when you prioritize your own needs for once, well then let them call you selfish. Let them talk behind your back, because the truth is, you're doing them a favor. You're showing them what it looks like when someone knows how to say, no, I'm not going to let myself burn out for your comfort. You're teaching them a lesson they'll never forget, even if they don't realize it right away. You're not here to fix everyone. You're here to take care of yourself, to make sure you're strong enough to live your life. Because the reality is, if you're too busy saving everyone else, you'll never have the chance to live for yourself. You'll always be the person they depend on, the person they walk all over, the person who gets lost in the noise. And when you're gone, when you've run yourself into the ground, they'll move on. They'll find someone else to use, someone else to lean on. But you'll just be a memory, a faint echo of someone who forgot to take care of themselves first. You know, there's a little rule that everyone seems to forget until it's too late. You can't pour from an empty cup. Isn't that funny? Everyone's so busy running around, trying to fix the world, trying to fix everyone else, that they forget about one simple fact. They have to fix themselves first. Oh, they don't think about it. Why would they? It's all about being the hero, being the person who saves the day, right? But here's the deal. If you're constantly giving, constantly sacrificing, constantly making sure everyone else is taken care of, where do you think that energy comes from? You think it's just magically replenished every time you give a piece of yourself away? Let me tell you something. It's not. You start out with good intentions, of course. You want to help. You want to be the person everyone turns to. You want to feel like you matter, like you're needed. But eventually you hit a wall. You start running on empty, but you keep going. You keep pretending like you have more to give. You smile, you nod, you say yes, you say, I'll take care of it, and don't worry, I've got this. But inside you're running out of fuel. You don't even notice it at first. You don't notice the cracks forming. You think it's just a little tiredness, just a little fatigue. Everyone else needs you, right? You're the one they turn to, the one they rely on, but that's the trap, isn't it? You don't realize how deep you're sinking until you're already drowning in it. And when you finally do feel it, the exhaustion, the weariness, the ache of constantly giving, what do? What do the people around you do? They don't notice. No, they don't care. They don't stop to check in on you. They don't ask how you're holding up. They just keep taking. Because they think you have more to give, because they don't care how much it costs you. And you, well, you keep saying yes, you keep going, because that's what they want. That's what they expect. But one day you'll look in the mirror and see it. The person you've become, a person who's given everything, and for what? What do you have left? A hollow shell. A burnt-out version of who you used to be. And when you're at that breaking point, when you're completely drained, when the walls are closing in and you've got nothing left, then they'll start noticing, and it'll be too late. The thing is, you never should have gotten to that point. You should have taken care of yourself. You should have said, no, I can't do it all. But you didn't, because you were too busy playing the part of the hero. Everyone around you will tell you that you're supposed to help them, right? That you're supposed to be there for them no matter what. It's almost like they forget that you need something too. It's like they forget that you are human. They expect you to be the fixer, the person who never needs anything in return, the person who just keeps giving, never asking for help. And you're so deep in it, so lost in the idea of being the one who always saves the day, that you never stop to think, who's gonna save you? You think if you keep giving, if you keep pretending that you're invincible, everything will work out. That somehow, if you keep holding the weight of the world, someone will notice and they'll take care of you when it's all over. But that's the thing. People don't notice. They just keep taking. And when you're broken, when you can't do it anymore, they'll move on to someone else. They'll find the next person to lean on. And you'll just be a pile of empty promises. A person who burned out trying to save others without ever thinking about saving themselves first. You can't pour from an empty cup. You can't keep giving if you're not taking care of yourself. The world is always going to demand from you. It's always going to ask you to be more, to do more, to be the person who holds everything together. But you can't do that unless you have something to hold on to. You can't help anyone if you're not helping yourself first. The real joke is thinking you can keep going without stopping to refill, without taking a break. Because one day the laughter stops, one day the applause fades, and you're left standing there, wondering where it all went wrong, wondering why the world stopped caring. But it's not the world's fault, is it? It's yours. You let it happen. You let it go on. You let them drain you dry. Boundaries. They're cute, aren't they? People love to talk about them like there's some kind of magical line in the sand. Oh, you need boundaries. You have to set them. But then, when it comes time to actually use them, what happens? People look at you like you're crazy. Why are you saying no? Why are you being difficult? They don't get it. They've never had to deal with the consequences of never setting boundaries. They don't see the chaos they're creating. And you? Well, you're the one left cleaning up the mess, always. You're the one who ends up apologizing, explaining yourself, making sure everyone else is happy and comfortable while you slowly drown in your own exhaustion. And for what? So they can stay comfortable in their own little world while you sacrifice your own peace of mind, your own time, your own sanity, just to make sure they're not uncomfortable. Isn't that lovely? Isn't that just wonderful? The thing about boundaries is they aren't there to protect other people. No, they're there to protect you. And yet so many people walk around with no boundaries at all, just letting anyone and everyone walk all over them, taking their time, their energy, their kindness, their patience, until there's nothing left. They don't say no because they're afraid of what people will think. They don't set limits because they don't want to disappoint anyone. But guess what? No one's going to come to your rescue when you're burned out. No one's going to thank you for running yourself into the ground for their comfort. They'll just take and take and take. And when you finally snap, when you finally say enough is enough, what do? They act like you've done something wrong, like you're the problem, because heaven forbid you dare to put yourself first. Heaven forbid you dare to have a limit. Boundaries aren't about pushing people away. They're about keeping the chaos at a distance. They're about saying, I have limits and I deserve respect. But no one tells you that. No one tells you how to actually say no and stick to it. They'll guilt trip you. They'll make you feel small. They'll make you feel like you're being selfish, like you're the bad guy just for protecting your own peace. And you know what happens then? You start second-guessing yourself. You start wondering if maybe, just maybe, they're right. Maybe you are being selfish. Maybe you should keep giving, keep bending, keep breaking yourself apart until you have nothing left. You start questioning your own worth, your own needs, your own rights. Because that's what they want. They want you to think you don't deserve to set boundaries. They want you to think your needs are unimportant. They want you to think that the only way to be a good person is to sacrifice yourself for their comfort. But let me tell you something. They don't get to decide that. You do. And if they don't like it, if they don't like you setting boundaries, if they don't like you saying no for once, well, that's their problem, not yours. Because here's the thing. The world will keep pushing you. It will keep pushing until you break. People will keep asking for more of your time, your energy, your kindness until there's nothing left for you. And when you're the one left with nothing, when you've given everything you have and still get nothing in return, who's going to be there for you? Who's going to clean up the mess? No one. Absolutely no one. That's why boundaries are so important. They're not just some nice-to-have thing. They're your lifeline. They're the line in the sand that says, I will not be used up. I will not be taken for granted. And yet, we let people cross that line all the time. We let them take what they want, and we sit there, waiting for the universe to fix it. But guess what? The universe doesn't work that way. It doesn't hand out rewards for people who don't protect themselves. It doesn't reward martyrdom, no. The universe will sit back, watch you burn out, and let everyone around you keep taking from you until you've got nothing left. And when you finally have nothing left to give, when you're crumpled and defeated, they'll move on to the next person, the next target. So you need to set those boundaries. You need to draw that line and make it clear. Because if you don't, no one will do it for you. And they'll keep pushing until there's nothing left of you. They'll keep asking for more of you until they drain you dry. So set those boundaries. And when they get upset, when they start making you feel guilty, when they start calling you selfish, remember this. It's not selfish to protect yourself. It's survival. It's the only way you're going to make it out of this without losing who you are. The moment you start putting yourself first, the moment you start saying no, is the moment you take back control of your own life. It's funny how the world expects you to be a superhero, right? To just give and give until you have nothing left. It's like they think you're supposed to be a bottomless pit of generosity, energy, and care. As if you have an endless supply of love and patience. You can handle it, they say. You'll be fine, they say. They don't care. They don't care about how much it takes from you. They don't care about the toll it's taking on your soul, on your mind, on your body. They just want. They want more. And you're the fool who keeps giving because you think you have to. You think that if you say no once, the world will collapse and you'll be seen as selfish. You think that if you stop, if you put your own needs first, you'll be letting everyone down. But what they don't tell you, what they conveniently forget to mention, is that giving to everyone else while you rot from the inside out doesn't make you a hero. It makes you a martyr. And martyrs, they don't get the applause they think they deserve. They don't get the thank you they're hoping for. No, martyrs get tossed aside when they've served their purpose. And you, my friend, are nothing but an expendable pawn in this little game. You're too busy trying to make everyone happy, trying to be what they need you to be, trying to be the fixer, the problem solver, the constant pillar of support, that you forget about the most important person in your life. You forget about your own needs. You forget about your own well-being. You forget that you need rest, that you need care, that you need to be treated with the same respect and attention you give to others. But that's the thing, isn't it? We're taught that everyone else comes first. We're taught that we have to take care of them, make them comfortable, make them feel special, make sure they have everything they need, while we're left holding the empty bag, the leftover scraps of ourselves. And you think it's noble, you think it's good, you think it's right to keep giving even when you have nothing left to give. You think that it's the way things should be. But here's the truth. It's a trap. A brilliant trap. You give until you're drained, until you're an empty shell, and then what happens? Everyone walks away. Everyone goes on with their lives, their problems solved, while you're left with nothing but exhaustion, resentment, and regret. Why do you think people don't take care of themselves? Why do you think they keep sacrificing themselves for others day after day, even when it's killing them inside? It's because they've been convinced that it's what they should do. They've been convinced that their worth is tied to how much they give, to how much they bend over backward for others. And they'll keep bending. They'll keep giving until they break. And when they do, when they finally snap, when the weight of it all becomes too much to carry, what happens? Do they get a parade? Do they get a medal for all their sacrifice? No, they don't. Because people will just move on. They'll move on to the next person who hasn't broken yet. The next person who's still willing to take on the weight of the world without complaining. You think you're being noble. You think you're doing the right thing by constantly putting others first. You think that by being the hero, by being the one everyone turns to, you'll find fulfillment, you'll find meaning, you'll find purpose. But all you're finding is emptiness. All you're finding is a slow death. You can't keep going forever. You can't keep pouring out every last drop of yourself and expect to still be standing at the end of it. And the worst part, the absolute worst part, people don't even notice. They don't even see it. They don't see how much it's taking out of you. They don't see how much you're suffering. They just see the result. They see you're always there, always on call, always willing to help. They see that you'll sacrifice your own needs just to make sure they're happy, and they take it. They take it all. And you stand there, hoping for some kind of recognition, some kind of reward. But there is none. No one thanks you. No one cares. So why do you do it? Why do you keep giving? Why do you keep letting them take? Because you've been fooled into thinking that's what makes you valuable. You've been fooled into thinking that your worth is tied to how much you give, how much you do for others. But here's the cold, hard truth. Your worth has nothing to do with that. Your worth is in you. It's in your ability to recognize that you matter too. It's in your ability to say, I'm important. I need to take care of myself before I can take care of anyone else. You don't have to be the martyr. You don't have to be the one who loses everything just to keep everyone else afloat. You don't have to be the one who gives until you have nothing left. You can choose to stop. You can choose to protect yourself. You can choose to set boundaries. You can choose to walk away. But that's the hardest part, isn't it? That's the part no one tells you about. The part where you have to make a choice. Your life or their comfort. Oh, isn't it adorable when people think that everything you do should be for their benefit? The constant pulling, the endless expectations, the do this for me and can you help me with that? And of course you do, because what else can you do? You can't say no. Saying no is somehow the worst thing you can do in their eyes. Oh, you're not helping me? You're not going to drop everything to make sure I'm okay? They look at you like you're the villain, the monster, the one who's selfish. But here's the thing. No one tells you that your value doesn't come from constantly being at everyone else's beck and call. It's funny how they all expect you to be their personal problem solver. Oh, you'll figure it out. You're always there for us, they say, completely ignoring the fact that when was the last time anyone actually gave something back to you? When was the last time anyone noticed you were struggling? Ah, but of course, you're not supposed to struggle. No, you're supposed to always be the rock, the one who handles everything, the one who's strong. Everyone expects you to carry them without any regard for what it costs you. The price is irrelevant because, hey, as long as they get what they want, right? You're just supposed to keep giving and giving until your spirit is drained, until you're nothing but a shell of who you used to be. People love to tell you that you should help others. You should give back. You should be there for people. Sure, it's great advice in theory. But what they never tell you is that helping others means nothing if you're neglecting yourself in the process. And that's where the trick lies, doesn't it? You're so busy helping, so caught up in everyone else's problems that you don't even realize that you're erasing your own. You're putting out fire after fire, but no one notices the flames burning inside you. No one sees that you're suffocating under the weight of everyone else's need. They just keep piling it on, and what do? You smile. You nod, you say, of course I'll help. But here's the kicker. You're not doing it because you're a saint or because you're selfless or because you're just a kind soul. You're doing it because somewhere deep inside you, you've convinced yourself that this is your purpose, that this is your duty to be the caretaker, to be the fixer. You think that if you don't do it, you're failing. You think that if you stop, everything will fall apart. But here's the thing. Everything is falling apart already. And it's not because you're not doing enough. It's because you're giving until there's nothing left. And when there's nothing left, what happens? Everything crumbles. But do they care? No. Do they even notice? No, because they never saw you as a person. They only saw what you could do for them. Oh, and the guilt. The guilt is a masterpiece, isn't it? You can feel it creeping in every time you want to say no. Every time you think about putting yourself first. You feel like you're failing them. Like you're being selfish, like somehow you're the one doing something wrong by not sacrificing everything for them. And they'll let you carry that weight. They'll let you carry it until your back breaks. They'll let you carry it until you fall apart at the seams, and they'll still be there waiting, expecting, because they've never had to bear the burden of caring for themselves. Because it's easier to just let you do it. Why bother fixing their own mess when you're there to clean it up? Why bother changing their habits when you're always going to be the one picking up the pieces? But here's the ugly truth. You're not going to be the hero forever. People are quick to forget. They're quick to walk away once they get what they need from you. They don't think about what happens when you've been drained dry. They don't see the toll it takes. The endless cycles of giving and giving only for them to move on when they don't need you anymore. They never stick around to help you when it's your turn to collapse, when you're broken and battered, when you're left with nothing but your exhaustion and your broken heart. Where are they? They're gone, off to their next savior. And there you are, alone, with the ruins of your own kindness. So here's a thought. Stop being the go-to. Stop being the one who drops everything, every time. Stop letting everyone else decide your worth based on how much you can give them. Because let me tell you, no one else is going to stop and say, hey, maybe you need a break. Maybe you need someone to take care of you for once. No, they're too busy, too focused on what they want from you. They're too focused on getting what they need, and you're just a tool to help them get there. But you, my friend, are not a tool. You are not an endless well. You are not a servant. You are not a second-class citizen whose only purpose is to serve everyone else. You deserve to be seen. You deserve to be valued for who you are, not for what you do for others. So, yeah. It's time to stop being king to everyone, because you're not some god who can wave a magic wand and solve everyone's problems. You're a human being. You have limits. You have needs. You have a breaking point. And when you finally realize that, when you finally understand that you don't have to carry the world on your shoulders, it's like waking up from a nightmare where everyone else's happiness was more important than your own. A nightmare where you thought that you had to give everything until there was nothing left. But now, you can choose. You can choose to be selfish in the best possible way. You can choose to stop giving when it's costing you everything. You can choose to be you. Not the version of yourself that everyone else needs, the version of yourself that you deserve to be. You ever notice how people are so quick to expect you to put them first? They don't even hesitate. They'll come running to you, all in a panic, with their problems, with their drama, their mess. Help me, fix this, I need you. And like the good little servant you've been trained to be, you jump in, don't you? You take on their problems, carry their baggage, and you do it all with a smile, like it's some kind of award you're winning. But what happens when it's your turn? Oh, right, nobody's around. They're too busy with their own issues, too busy expecting you to be the one to save the day. Funny, huh? They expect you to be there for them, but when the tables turn, when it's you who needs help, you find out real quick that they've moved on to the next person to drain dry. They'll be gone in a heartbeat, and you'll be left standing there with nothing but the wreckage of their demands. It's laughable, really. You've spent all this time trying to be the one who's there, the one who's present, the one who picks up the pieces when the world shatters around them, but no one tells you that eventually you'll shatter too. No one tells you that eventually you'll hit that point where you can't give anymore. You'll be drained dry, emptied out, with nothing left to offer. And that's when the real fun begins, isn't it? Because that's when you start to realize something so very important. You're not their hero. No matter how much they try to tell you that you are, no matter how many times they applaud your willingness to help, when it comes down to it, you're just a tool. You're just a means to an end. You're nothing more than a temporary fix. And the best part is how people are quick to forget that you're a human being. They'll forget that you have your own life, your own battles. They'll forget that your energy isn't endless, that your heart isn't a bottomless pit. They'll forget that at some point you need to be taken care of too, but no one will stop to check on you. No one will ask, how are you? Oh, no, because you're not allowed to have bad days. You're not allowed to struggle. You're not allowed to need help, because apparently the world revolves around them. So you continue to do it, you continue to give, you continue to sacrifice, hoping, praying that maybe, just maybe, someone will notice. That someone will realize how much you've given, how much you've suffered in silence. But you know what happens? Nothing. They don't notice. They don't care. They never do. They just take what you have to give and keep moving. And isn't it funny how people will applaud you when you give? When you go above and beyond, when you do things no one asked for, when you put everyone else's needs before your own, oh, they love that. They'll tell you you're doing a great job. They'll call you selfless, kind, noble. They'll heap praise on you like you've just cured the world's ills. But the second you stop, the second you start to put yourself first, that's when the masks start to slip. That's when they start to question you. Why aren't you helping me? They'll ask. What happened to you? You used to care. And that's when it hits you. They never cared about you. They only cared about what you could do for them. The moment you stop performing for them, the moment you stop giving, you become useless in their eyes. And the best part? They don't even realize it. They'll act like they're the victims in all this. They'll pretend like you're the one who's wrong for not constantly sacrificing yourself for their happiness. Isn't it a beautiful little game? But here's the truth you've been too blind to see. You're not a saint. You're not some kind of miracle worker destined to carry the weight of the world on your shoulders. You're a human being, and like any human being, you have limits. You have needs. You have a breaking point. And what happens when you push yourself too far? What happens when you give and give until there's nothing left? What happens is you burn out. You break. And when you break, no one is going to be there to pick up the pieces. No one is going to come to your rescue because they never needed you to rescue them. They only needed you to rescue them. And once you can't, they'll move on to someone else, just like they did before. The cruelest part? The world will make you feel guilty for wanting to take care of yourself. It will make you feel like you're somehow wrong for saying no. It will make you feel selfish for choosing yourself over others. But you know what's truly selfish? Letting yourself drown, because everyone else's problems are more important than your own. Letting yourself rot on the inside just to keep others happy. That's the real selfishness. That's the real crime. So you can keep playing the game if you want. You can keep bending over backwards for everyone else, hoping someone will notice. You can keep sacrificing your happiness and your well-being for people who won't even blink when you're no longer there. But here's the catch. You don't have to. You don't have to keep doing it. You can choose to stop. You can choose to take a step back and say, you know what? I matter too. You can choose to stop being everyone else's hero because, let's face it, you're not going to get a medal for your self-sacrifice. You're just going to get a slow, painful death of your spirit. So stop playing the martyr, stop giving until you have nothing left, and start giving to the one person who actually matters, you.